Have you heard of Tallinn, Estonia? I recently had the opportunity to visit Tallinn and I loved it. And I'm going to tell you why Tallinn is a must-visit destination for your next European vacation. It was a true pleasure to visit Tallinn for many reasons. One of them is that Tallinn has a beautiful and very walkable old town. And the old town is still set in its kind of medieval style. So it was really nice to kind of see all the medieval structures still present to this day. Tallinn is also incredibly affordable and not crowded with tourists. I went in the middle of September, so it could be considered still high season or maybe getting into the shoulder season, but it was not crowded at all whatsoever. And it was so affordable. I'll give you an example. I stayed at a 4-star hotel in Old Town, within the walls of Old Town, and it was only about $100 per night. So that's super affordable in my opinion, and even comparing the prices of the food or items in the grocery store, it's very affordable compared to other European destinations. And Estonia does use the euro. It's also a super convenient location in terms of visiting other countries in the Baltic Sea area or in Scandinavia. For example, it's only a 2-hour ferry ride from Helsinki, Finland. So whether you're visiting Helsinki or Tallinn, you can easily make a day trip out of visiting the other city. And when I say ferry, it's more like a cruise ship because the ferry boat itself is ginormous, basically like a cruise ship with all the similar type of cruise ship facilities. You can even rent a room for your 2-hour ferry ride. But yeah, it's a really comfortable experience on that ferry. Also, Tallinn has a really rich history due to its involvement with the Soviet Union at one point in time. So there's some really interesting sites to be seen for that. And Tallinn is a UNESCO heritage site. Here's a beautiful view of Old Town Tallinn from the top of the bell tower at St. Olaf's Church. If you are up for walking up a narrow spiral staircase, I highly recommend going up to that bell tower to take a look at this view as well. The wall of the old town is visible in many areas. You can even pay a small fee to climb the wall and walk sections of the wall. Here are a few of the many towers around the town wall. Here's a view of the main town square in Old Town Tallinn. As you can see, it's very quaint. I found this to be a particularly interesting looking structure. It's part of the upper town of Old Town, and this is called the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. An area that was a bit more off the beaten path was the Volta Kabartol. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but this is a really cool area to actually check out because it's an abandoned old industrial factory area that a lot of the buildings are partly torn down or just empty on the inside, a lot of overgrown vegetation. But it was really neat because even though it was like an abandoned industrial factory area, it's kind of become a park for the people of Tallinn. Because when I visited, you think that it might be a little scary and spooky, but there were lots of other people walking their dogs. There was even a woman by herself with her baby just taking a stroll through this abandoned factory area. And it was actually really beautiful in a unique way. Here's another look at one of the abandoned factories. Another unique site, in my opinion, is the Linen Hall. So this was built, I think back in the 1980s, and it was actually used as part of the 1980 Summer Olympics that was hosted by Moscow. Sailing events were actually held in this area utilizing the Lenin Hall, because back then Estonia was part of the Soviet Union. This building, after the Olympics, was used for performing arts like concerts and such. It's since become abandoned, as you can see here. But again, it has a kind of eerie beauty to it, even though you're normally not a huge fan of a ton of graffiti on public buildings, but it was quite beautiful. For those of you who might have seen the movie Tenet, Lenin Hall was actually featured in that movie as a stand-in for an opera house in Ukraine. And what's also interesting about Lenin Hall is that it's in a prime location in Tallinn, right by the harbor with a beautiful water view. It even has a helicopter pad and a boat dock associated with this building. But yet it's currently abandoned and not in use. As I mentioned, Estonia was part of the Soviet Union, so there are some interesting Soviet era history type of activities that one can partake in. So, for example, I visited the KGB Museum at the Vera Hotel. The Vera Hotel is still an operational hotel that guests can stay in. So it's actually kind of interesting to learn about the history of that hotel and its association with the KGB. Hopefully, I have managed to convince a few of you to add Tallinn to your list of vacation spots for the next time you're in Europe. I have listed here some traditional must-do sightseeing in Tallinn and also some unique and more off the beaten path type activities. So must-dos would be to just definitely check out the Old Town, which includes the Upper Town and the Lower Town. And sites within the Old Town include things like the Old Apothecary Museum, which is free to visit. Climb the tower of St. Olaf's Church to get an amazing view of Old Town. There's also free viewpoints in various areas of Upper Town that you can check out as well. And there's also a KGB prison cell tour site that you can also visit. And for some of the more unique areas you can potentially check out is that abandoned factory area called Volta Kvartal. There's also that Lenin Hall, that's the abandoned event center, the KGB Museum, as well as a market that's called Balta Jamatung, if I'm saying that correctly. There were some really cool and unique foods available there. There's also tons of antique shops located within that market. One of the best doner kebab meals I've ever had was at that market. So definitely recommend checking that out if you have the opportunity. Thank you for watching and have a great day.